What's up, guys? Welcome to this week's episode of Merricks Garage. Before I go ahead and put away my trail pack out kit, I thought I'd just tear it down with you guys, go through it, and show you what I've got in there. So it's not all that complete. There's obviously more stuff that I can always be adding, but being able to pack it in the truck, being able to move it in and out of the truck, being able to secure it, and being able to fix pretty much most anything that comes up on my truck that isn't a catastrophic failure is pretty cool. These pack outs from Milwaukee have made a big difference in how I do that. They've got some really cool features that I'll get into, but most importantly, we'll tear down what's inside of them. Let's go. Full disclosure, as you guys know, or maybe you don't know, I am a brand ambassador or an influencer or whatever for Milwaukee Tool. I reached out to them a long time ago because I had purchased a ton of Milwaukee stuff and it had always performed well for me. And I was stoked when they offered to have me as an ambassador. So I've been able to get some really cool stuff from them. I use and abuse it. And it is the same stuff that I was buying with my own hard-earned money before I had the partnership with them. So I did want to be upfront about that. With that said, let me show you what I particularly like about these cases, because there are quite a few options on the market. First off, you will notice how built these cases are. They are really, really rugged. I have had these things tumble out of my truck. I've tossed them out of my truck. They've been beat up and rolled all over the ground, and they are doing great. The main feature that I love about these guys is how easy they disconnect. The system allows all of the boxes to stack and easily be removable. This is a huge advantage when packing for any trip. Being able to lock the cases down in tons of different configurations, and then the locking mechanism is right on the front, which allows me to not only get into the cases, but also unlock them and unlatch them without having to do any latches or straps on the side. When I find that there's straps on the side down here, it's often difficult to use those because these guys will be packed in tight. There'll be a refrigerator, or there'll be a spare tire or a high lift jack, something on the side that's gonna make it difficult to get my hand around and open them. So having everything on the front really makes a big difference. The fact that they can stack in any configuration is super cool. So let's jump into the first one. I have 4 of these cases. One I use for hardware. This will carry fasteners, electrical, brake fittings, things like that. I've got a recovery case. This is gonna have airlines, tree straps, shackles. This I use to carry personal stuff. So this will have like clothing, sleeping, personal effects, basically a suitcase. And then down at the bottom, this will be my fluids. Jumping into the first box on top, this is where I'm gonna keep this stuff. Hardware, there's gonna be fasteners in here, brake fittings, basically small parts that I will need to do minor repairs. This stays the way it is. It doesn't really get moved around that much. The kits come with these boxes that I use for a variety of parts. You see, I label everything that's on here, and then I label what's going to be found underneath. So underneath, you can see I'm going to have 53 inches of braided line and some electrical parts. So there's my line and some various, there's a caliper bolt in there. And then here I've got a bunch of small, like wire nuts and fuses and relays and things like that. In this guy, more brake parts, washers, relays, AN fittings, a caliper, through banjo bolt, spark plug, valve stems. I do not look at this kit as rebuild my truck on the trail kind of thing. What I have this top small parts bin for is if I do have to do a repair, it's the way to pull something out of the system that may be problematic. Putting in a new relay, for example, or changing a spark plug to a new one. Those are small and easy enough to pack that they can help troubleshoot and problem solve just weird issues that may come up on the trail. The rest of the stuff, hardware, Same thing. If I can replace a bolt, replace a nut, replace a fastener when I am putting the repair that I've done back together with new hardware, then that's just one less area that I need to be concerned about. So while there's not a whole lot of stuff in here that can fix a catastrophic problem, there's a ton of stuff here that can fix a huge variety of issues. So let me finish up this one and we'll move on to the recovery gear in a minute. Tools are on this guy right here. I've got some axle seals, I've got pliers, I've got different socket heads, I've got different screwdrivers, I've got all my box wrenches over here, and then over on this guy, zip ties, steering hardware, and then link hardware, large nuts and bolts are underneath. And then this is where you will find a lot of the hardware. Zip ties for when all else fails, I can just zip tie it. Steering arm studs, castle nuts, fine thread, coarse thread, 14 bolts, socket heads, washers. I've got a whole variety of small fasteners in here. And then over here, I have a selection of hose clamps and other tiny, tiny fasteners. Moving to this guy. These are two 1350 U-joints. I designed my drivetrain to have what I call a fusible link, which is going to be a piece within the system that should break before anything else does. Much like a 10 amp fuse is going to blow before you melt your stereo. With those fusible links, I now have the ability to replace damage on the trail that may have taken out a drive shaft, may have taken out an axle shaft, things like that. It's a lot easier and a lot less complicated to carry a small selection of U-joints, in my case all 1350, than it is to try and carry multiple different stub shafts, 2 different drive shafts. Now, I would love to get a drive shaft and, backup shafts down the road, but for now, having a 1350 U-joint that I can throw in should I blow one up on the trail is a quick and easy way to get my 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive back up and running. In addition to all the small hardware, I'm going to be carrying a lot of large hardware. Everything from wheel studs to bolts to nuts to spacers to link hardware. This could replace a broken bolt if for whatever reason that ever happens on the truck. So that's my selection of small parts and small tools. This is just a grab bag. It's got a little bit of everything in it. It helps me, brings me peace of mind when I'm on the trail, knowing that I've got stuff to cobble together a MacGyver repair if I needed to. Pull this guy off. Once again, you can see how easily they come apart. Now I have my recovery gear. This stays the way it is. I have my tire deflators in here, tarps, airline shackles, snatch blocks, tree straps. This pretty much lives in my truck. It's what allows me to inflate my tires. It's what allows me to operate my winch. It's what allows me to deflate tire pressure. It's got a whole bunch of stuff in here. It packs up nicely, and combined with the winch and the high lift jack, there's not a whole lot of stuff I couldn't extricate myself out of with this box. Inside, first I've got my tarps. Tarps are just such an obvious thing to throw in your bag. I think everyone should have a couple tarps in their gear bag. They can provide shelter if you need it, but more importantly, or more usefully, throw them down on the ground when you're working. If you're under your truck, throw them on the ground. You're not going to get filthy, but more importantly, anything that you drop will be a lot easier to find. So I always like to throw a tarp down. It just keeps my tools closer to me, helps me keep track of parts, and I don't get dirty. So 2 tarps because I want to be extra specially careful. And then in here, I've got tire pressure gauge. I've got a filler, a backup tire pressure filler. I've got some shackles down here, D-rings, and I've got another D-ring here. ARB tire deflator. This guy is clutch. I've used all the other products. Heck, I released air pressure by just using a rock and pushing on the valve stem for years. This is quick, foolproof, and easy to use. It threads on, it pulls the core, it drops the pressure to where you want it. You close it off, put the core back in, and you're at your set pressure. No fuss, no muss, really easy to use. Put one of these in your trail bag. In addition to that, I have a snatch blocks down here. I don't know how familiar you guys are with winching, but a snatch block essentially doubles the effective rate of your winch. So if you have a 10,000 pound winch and you throw a snatch block into the system, you're essentially turning your pulling capability to roughly 20,000 pounds. It's what's called a 2-to-1 system, where you double the pulley, double the winch line from your winch through the snatch block, which is attached to your anchor point, and then back onto an anchor point on your vehicle. What that enables you to do is, for every 2 feet that you pull in cable, you're gonna move 1 foot. So you're increasing the efficiency, well, no, not the efficiency, you're increasing the efficacy of your winch. It's actually gonna be stronger, it's just not gonna be able to pull as far. So if you've got a short winch line, you could be in trouble, but hopefully you don't have a short winch line. So a snatch block and an appropriate shackle and tree strap to use it with basically make your winch unstoppable. I've yet to have a situation that I couldn't get solved with a snatch block, a tree strap, and my winch. In addition to those, I've also got the air line that will connect up to my compressor. I have the bulkhead off the front of my bumper so I can inflate my tires very easily with that compressor and these airlines. So let's close this one up. I'll put the tarps back away later. And another one comes off. Now this box is a little different because it's quite large. But what that allows me to do is have a box that I can just throw a bunch of crap in. I got a bunch of merchandise in here right now, Merricks Garage, hats and stickers and stuff like that. But I use this as my suitcase. It's just gonna have like whatever I need on the trail. I have personal stuff, a change of clothing, sleeping, stuff like that. It's nice to know that it's all weatherproof. It blends in with the rest of my gear, and I can lock it to my truck knowing that it's gonna be safe and out of the way. Finally, this box carries all my fluids. The only thing I'm missing to stop me from doing a full fluid change would be gear oil and maybe some more oil. So a selection of funnels. If you've ever had to try and add ATF to your transmission through the dipstick tube without a funnel, you know how fun that can be. So having a bunch of different funnels in there, more than I have in my garage actually, gives me the confidence that I'm not gonna have the fluid but then be unable to put it into the vehicle. So a selection of funnels. Starting fluid, I mean, why not? The stuff just is awesome. Start fires with it at your camp if you want. Also, selection of belts, brake, oil, coolant, ATF, and power steering. So the only ones that I'm missing is gear oil, and I need to throw a filter in here. I'm gonna throw an oil filter in here and a couple more quarts, and then I'll have enough to do an oil change if I need it. Do I plan on doing an oil change on my vehicle in the middle of the trail? No, but having lost all my oil before and having overheated a transmission and puked out all the oil before, I can tell you the peace of mind that comes from knowing that I have fluids in here that I can add to, that I could limp off the trail with. So it does take up quite a bit of space, but the peace of mind it brings is totally worth it. Finally, let's jump over to my big gear bag and I'll show you what grab bag of tools I have in there. This Milwaukee Tool bag is what I constantly cycle through because I'm pulling tools off my bench, throwing them in the bag, and then when I get home, I'm usually pulling them out again. Now, I chose this bag for a couple of reasons. It's designed to click onto this system very easily, and it's part of the whole ecosystem, so to speak. But what I like about this thing is it is massive. Now, that does have some drawbacks in the fact that it can be difficult to find exactly what you're looking for, that 10mm socket, when you have such a big bag. But knowing that it's in there, knowing that you can get to it, and knowing that you're carrying probably 3 of them, is totally worth it. So let's just power through what I have in here right now. These lithium powered or lithium batteries have really come a long way. This is a jump starter. It's got enough juice in this guy, and let's see if it's holding its charge. That's one of the important things that I look for with these guys. I have a couple of these jump starters. They've been sent to me by various Amazon companies for me to try out. And what my normal criticism of these guys is, you charge them and they jumpstart a truck or a car or whatever just fine. But if you let them sit for a couple of weeks, you'll go to turn it on and the battery will be dead. It's just not convenient to keep this thing plugged into a wall because it should be living in the vehicle. So let's see how this guy's done. I'm still at 100%. That's really cool news. It's one of the reasons that I like this guy so much. This is Audio W. I don't know. I'll put a link to it in my Amazon store. But this thing's being used a ton. Now, I have dual batteries in the Blazer. I don't ever expect to have an electrical issue. With my MechMan alternator, the solid-state switching diode, the isolator combiner, and 2 AGM batteries, if I die on battery power, I have done something majorly wrong. In that case, I have this guy to save me. In this whole little kit, I have everything I need to jumpstart my truck. And I have tested it. It will jumpstart my truck. I killed the battery while it was down and out for the link conversion. And then I plugged this thing into the primary battery because I wanted to see if it would work without jumping off my backup battery. And it started my truck. I loaned this out to a buddy who was trying to delay getting a new battery, and he said he was using it like 3-4 times a day. I know, kind of dumb. But it kept on delivering. He said he could get about 3 or 4 jumps out of it before he had to recharge it. So this guy goes everywhere. It generally lives in my wife's car because I kind of feel like I'd like her to have the ability to jumpstart her car. In addition to that, I got a couple radios that I always bring with me. I did a video on radios a while ago. I'm not going to get into radios here because radio nerds are a vicious bunch. If you guys are looking for some comedy, go check out my video on ham radios, walkie-talkie, CBs. I ruffled a lot of feathers and I got all these radio ham operators all fired up that I wasn't using the right code and your certification. Anyway, whatever. I've got a couple radios. They're cheap, they're easy to use, they're easy to program, and they could be a lifesaver. So I may be breaking the law with them because I don't have my ham license, but whatever. So take these guys out of here. It's always nice to have a couple radios because then you have one and you can give it to someone else in your group. That way you know that both radios are programmed, you know that they're on the same frequency, you know that they've been taken care of, and you know they work. So you may lose a radio here and there, but hopefully your friends don't like to steal. Backup air compressor. This guy rocks. It will do 2, 3, sometimes 4 40-inch tires on one of these 4 amp hour M12 12-volt batteries. This guy is awesome. It's tiny, it's portable, it's packable, and it really works. Jumper cables. I carry a set of jumper cables, just, you know, those are just good basic tools to have. Various electrical stuff. I've got my big daddy impact in here. This guy will get me out of most trouble. If this cannot break it loose, then it was probably welded on. And in addition, let's get a light up in here so you guys can see. Hatchet, batteries, more batteries, towels, power ratchet, half-inch drive, multimeters, sockets, probes, extra wiring. This is just a grab bag of stuff. It is not completely kitted out right now because my tools are back on my workbench. But when I head out in the field and I know I'm going to be away from service and things like that, this thing gets full. And I really like how it stays open. I like the fact that it doesn't have a clamshell opening, because I find that those you can never really see what you're looking for. So the fact that it opens up nicely is a huge plus in my book. Now, obviously, there is a lot more small hand tools that I could be bringing with me, and I will tailor that around the kind of trip I'm taking. If I know I'm going to be in the backcountry and off the grid and away from help, I will obviously bring a lot more parts. I'll often throw some spare old stuff in there that I've got, like an old alternator, things like that. Just something to limp me off the trail. I'm not looking to do a full rebuild on the trail. I'm looking to get my truck moving again if I should damage something, so I can get myself out. That is what's drawn me to four-wheeling and fabrication and off-road mechanics for years, is I just want to be self-reliant. I don't want to rely on anyone else for my safety, my security, my well-being. I want to take care of myself. So this may look like a lot of gear. In fact, it is quite a bit of gear. But the modularity of these pieces allow me to pick and choose what I'm going to take. The small parts and the recovery gear, they can pretty much live in the truck because they're fairly small. I can also bounce these back and forth between the Suburban and the Blazer. They roll on the wheels very nicely. They pack down small enough. They're able to be locked into the bed of the truck. They're secure. They're protected from the elements. And they're reasonably priced. The stuff is not that expensive. And it provided me a really good alternative for carrying stuff raw and loose and bouncing around in the back. I built this guy a long time ago, and it has worked really well for me. It went in the back of the truck, had drawers that slide out. The refrigerator is mounted. I built this guy a long time ago, and it worked really, really well for me. It filled up the floor in the back of the Blazer and gave me a ton of storage options. I had these two drawers that pull out that were cavernous. It held my fridge on top, and then I could strap stuff down on the other side of it, and it worked really well. It won't fit anymore now that my shocks are coming up through the floor. It's a little small. I'm toying with the idea of modifying it, but the reality is, with these boxes, I kind of have my solution. I can bury the big box with all the fluids because that's not going to be used as often. I can put the recovery gear somewhere easy to get to, maybe up front by my winch controller and all that. And then this cavernous bag that eats all the big tools, that can be constantly modified and thrown into different areas. And yeah, it's all worked well for me. That's what I carry. The list is always growing. I've obviously got additional parts in the truck, like my high lift and a shovel and things like that. But yeah, this is a constantly evolving process. It's a constantly evolving kit out. But that's what's in it right now. Hit me down below. Tell me what I'm missing. Send me links to cool tools. I love tools that serve more than one purpose and do those purposes really, really well. I'm a sucker for sweet gadgets that improve your workflow and make a difficult job easier. So if you have something that you think I'd be interested in, let me know so I can check it out. There is one other tool that I use a lot, and it deserves its own video. That is an OBD code reader, especially with the OBD2 of the LS that I put in there. I can dive so deep into that computer that I can figure out exactly what's going on with it. So I've got a couple different code readers, from Wi-Fi ones to hardwired professional ones. And I will do an individual video on those two because they're pretty critical. Being able to dive in and clear a code and figure out why that code is happening, especially when you've got an OBD2 powered computerized engine, is really cool. They're small, but they're indispensable. So that gets thrown in here too, but for the time being, it is in my wife's car because we just got back from a big road trip in that one. But yeah, I will do a video on that. I hope this was all helpful for you guys. I always used to dig checking out people's gear and seeing what they carried and what they didn't carry and questioning as to why and what and where. But yeah, that's a dive into what I've got. Give me a subscribe, give me a like, hit that comments down below. We'll see you next week. Merricks Garage.